Welcome to Neo Royal House of Pricey Cardboard. Today, on episode 16 of Commander Gameplay, I will be joined by Kelly, Stéphane, and François. Kelly will be playing our Alela Artful Trickster deck. This is an artifact-focused list aiming to cast smarter artifacts like mana rocks and equipments to generate fairy and overwhelm the table with flyers. She can also take out opponents with commander damage with the right weapons. She runs a couple of enchantments as well, like double tokens or turning her fairies into 4/4 angels with vigilance. A scary deck if you didn't pack flying blockers. Stéphane will be playing Grenzo, Dungeon Warden. Master of the new Mulligan rule, this commander wants to run creatures with a specific power to flip them from the bottom of his deck. Stéphane's list is meant to have Grenzo as a 3/3 on the battlefield. He is packing a goblin sub-team as well as pingers and big mana spells. His opponents needs to keep an eye out for Ashnod's Altar, as this mana generator can end the game real quick. Frank will be playing his newest deck, Xyris Writhing Storm. The token capacity of this legendary being completely insane in multiplayer, he is packing some extra draws for the table as well as wheels, of course. He can end the game with pings like Perforos or combat damage by pumping the snakes. If he can get an Ace Enabler and Cryptolith right on the table, the game won't last much longer. Finally, I will be playing Zirda the Dawnwaker. I just released a deck on this list if you are interested. The idea is to use Zirda's reduction to gain value like drawing and ramping, and then use this mana to create a lot of tokens. The tokens, a little like Frank's deck, will either ping my opponents or get buffed to end the game by combat damage. My opening hand contains Goblin Engineer, Iroas God of Victory, Endless Atlas, Myriad Landscape, Great Furnace, Exotic Orchard, and a basic mountain. This hand is great. Starting with either one of my draw artifacts assures me a smooth game, and the Myriad on the side will make sure my Endless Atlas is online. Goblin Engineer usually fetches me some good piece, and I can swap my Great Furnace for it. Solid keep. Frank's opening hand contains Parallel Thoughts, Corvath's Fury, Blasphemous Act, Kitria Triome, Exotic Orchard, a basic forest, and a basic island. Frank's hand is not too quick, he does not have ramps, but the Blasphemous Act assures him a reset on board if somebody starts too fast. He is holding lands for all his colors and a wheel ready to go. It sure can work. Stéphane's opening hand contains Pitiless Plunderer, Krenko Mob Boss, 2 basic swamps, and 3 basic mountains. This hand is pretty slow, having no ramps, no draws, and only 4 drops. At least he can hit his land drops, cast his commander on 3, and hope to draw some gas. Kelly's opening hand contains Dispatch, Pure Steel Paladin, Anointed Procession, Divine Visitation, Hallowed Fountain, Exotic Orchard, and a Bujika Bug. Everyone keeps saying white is the worst color, but I'm terrified of this hand. She just needs to draw some ramp and drop the bomb on the table to make an army of angel, kind of a go big or go home hand. I get to start the game and land drop a Myriad Landscape. François land drops Kitria Triome. Kelly land drops Hallowed Fountain tapped. And Stéphane land drops a swamp. I land drop a plains and cast Endless Atlas. François land drops Exotic Orchard. And Kelly land drops an Exotic Orchard as well. She casts Pure Steel Paladin. Stéphane land drops a mountain. I join the party and land drop an Exotic Orchard. I then crack my Myriad Landscape for 2 basic plains. François land drops a mountain. He casts Whirlpool Warrior. Entering the battlefield, he shuffles his hand in his deck and draws that many cards. Kelly land drops a Glacial Fortress. She casts Mere Retriever, a new favorite of her. She heads into combat and sends Pure Steel Paladin to me. Stéphane land drops a mountain. He casts his commander, Grenzo, Dungeon Warden.
Okay, so here's the plan. You burn, I'll pillage stuff.
He pays 1 into the X so that it enters with a +1/+1 counter. I then drop a Great Furnace and cast a Soul Ring. I then cast an Arcane Signet. I follow it up with my commander, Zirda, the Dawnwaker. François casts Nissa Pilgrimage without spell mastery. He goes into combat and sends Whirlpool Warrior to Kelly. Kelly then drops Buried Ruin. She casts her commander, Alela Artful Trickster.
Rankles pranks are child's play. My name's will topple kingdoms.
Heading into combat, Burstill Paladin and May Retriever goes to Frank. Stefan casts Treasure Nabber. In reaction, I tap my Signet to activate the Endless Atlas, drawing a card. This is a great time for this card because it either stops me from using 3 mana or ramps Stefan by 3. For his combat step, Grenzo hits Frank for 3. Stefan then drops a Swamp and pass. I then drop a Mountain and activate the Endless Atlas. I then cast Sword of the Animist and equip it to my commander. Stefan gains control of my Arcane Signet until the end of the next turn. I decided I would go for halfway and only use one of the 3. I then cast Sacred Mesa. Heading into combat, I send Zirda to Stefan as an additional cost to my mana. On attack, the sword fetches me a Plains. François then drops a Forest. He casts his commander, Xyris, the Writhing Storm.
I have had it with these motherfucking snakes on my motherfucking airship!
He goes into combat and sends Whirlpool Warrior to me. Kelly then drops an island. She casts Hammer of Nazat. Alela triggers and creates a 1/1 blue fairy. She then heads into combat and sends Alela to me before I get flying blockers. Stefan then drops a swamp. He casts Mana Geyser, adding 16 red mana to his mana pool. No need to say that the table is quite worried. He casts Krenko, Mob Boss, and follow it up with Plague Crafter. He hits Zirda, Whirlpool Warrior, and a Fairy token. Stefan then activates Grenzo 5 times, revealing from the bottom of his deck Ravenous Chupacabra. Entering the battlefield, it destroys Xyris. He then flips from the bottom again and reveals Goblin Matron. Entering the battlefield, he fetches his library for Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker to his hand. He then flips Puppeteer Click. He does not want to wield his Kiki Jiki and does not bring back the Whirlpool Warrior. He flips 2 more times, hitting a swamp and a mountain, which he put into the graveyard. For his combat step, Grenzo and Treasure Nabber head to Kelly. At my upkeep, I create a Pegasus to sacrifice it to the Mesa trigger. I cast Goblin Engineer. Entering the battlefield, I put to grave Sunforger from my deck. François casts Blasphemous Act, and I shed a tear for my Flamey Hammer. All creatures are destroyed beside Alela. Puppeteer Clicks come back with a Persist and brings back my Goblin Engineer. With the ATB, he fetches his library and put to grave Ashnod's Altar, probably the scariest piece of the deck. François casts Stout Vessel. He then casts Fire of Yavimaya. Kelly then drops Pojuka Bug, exiling Stefan's graveyard. She then casts Anointed Procession. Going to combat, Alela goes to Stefan and he decides not to block. Stefan then drops Opal Palace. He then casts Pitiless Plunderer. Heading into combat, he sends Goblin Engineer to Kelly. At Stefan's end step, he exiles my Goblin and I draw a card with Endless Atlas. I then create 2 Pegasus with Sacred Mesa. At my upkeep, I sacrifice one of my 2 Pegasus. I recast my commander. I activate Endless Atlas to draw a card. I then land drop a mountain and equip my Sword of the Animist on the remaining Pegasus. I go to combat and send the sword-wielding Pegasus to Kelly. Attacking, I fetch a Plains to my battlefield. Frank casts Temple Bell. He uses it immediately, trying to find a land. He then casts Impact Tremor and pass. Kelly casts Dark Steel Plate. She equips it for free on a Fairy token. Alela triggers and creates 2 Fairy tokens. Heading into combat, Alela goes to Stefan again and he blocks with the Puppeteer. Pitiless Plunderer triggers and creates a treasure. Stefan casts his commander using Opal Palace. Grenzo then enters with 2 +1/+1 counters. He then land drops a basic swamp. And going to his end step, I create 3 Pegasus with Sacred Mesa. At my upkeep, I must sacrifice a Flying Horse. I land drop a mountain and then cast Skullclamp. I activate Endless Atlas for a card and follow it up with Soul of New Phyrexia. In reaction, Stefan activates Grenzo, hoping for some kind of removal. He flips Biddleback Chief. Entering the battlefield, he creates 2 Goblin tokens. I go to combat and send Zirda to Frank and 3 Pegasus with the sword to Stefan. Attacking, I fetch a Plains to my battlefield. Frank then drops an island. He recasts his commander. Impact Tremor triggers for 1 to each of his opponents. He then goes to combat, and sends the hasty Xyris to Kelly. Xyris triggers, both Kelly and Frank draw 3 cards. This triggers Xyris to create 3 snakes tokens, which then triggers Impact Tremor 3 times. Kelly then drops Enchant 10. She casts Divine Visitation, and now we have a second major problem. In reaction, Frank activates Temple Bell so that we might get an answer. We each draw a card and he creates 3 snakes. Impact Tremor deals us 3 damage. Kelly casts Azorius Signet. This triggers Alela, but before she gets to create 2 4/4 angels, I cast Chaos Warp on Divine Visitation. But she is ready and reacts with Abjure, sacrificing a fairy token and countering my spell. With no more reactions, we then resolve the stack and she creates 2 flying angels with vigilance. Ending into combat, she sends Alela to me for my attempt.
I draw a card for my turn. Oh no, ça va rien. Pas toi. Bon.
Stefan then drops a mountain. Keeping mana up for Grenzo, he passes. At Stefan's end step, I create 2 Pegasus, and at my upkeep, I sacrifice one of them. I then drop a Temple of Triumph, scrying 1. I activate my Endless Atlas to draw. Xyris triggers and creates a snake. I realize that I could probably kill myself and Stefan with the Sacred Mesa and Skull Clamp. Fun times. I then cast Burrow's Signet. I follow it up with Down to Dusk, targeting Divine Visitation. Sadly, I do not have any enchantment in my graveyard to bring back. I cast Iroas, God of Victory. For my combat step, I send Soul of the New Phyrexia to Frank, and 4 Pegasus with the sword plus my commander to Kelly. Iroas grants my attacking creature menace and somewhat indestructible. She blocks with 2 angels and 2 fairy, taking 3. I cast Bag of Holding and end my turn. Frank then drops an island. He activates Temple Bell, creating 3 snakes. He then casts Perforos, God of the Forge, which can only end up well for us. He followed it up with Shared Animosity, a card I really need to buy for Zirda. Going for the Alpha Strike, he sends 5 snakes each to me and Kelly, and his commander to Stefan. Shared Animosity goes on the stack. Stefan reacts by activating Grenzo 5 times. He reveals Earthstone to the graveyard, Dread Return, graveyard, Martin Stromgal to the battlefield, Merciless Executioner to the battlefield. We each sacrifice a token to its ETB. And finally, Black Market to the graveyard. I activate Sacred Mesa 3 times to create some blockers. We each block what we can, but since Xyris is a snake, he gets +10/+0, making Stefan draw 13 cards, creating 13 snakes that deals us 39 points of damage from Perforos and Impact Tremor, destroying the whole table. Looking back at this game, the turn where Stefan casted Mana Geyser, he took the lead by a lot. His army of goblin was ready to take on the table. But as we said in the starting hand section, Frank was ready to reset the board with a blasphemous act. After that, he wasn't completely out of the game, but he didn't manage to climb back on top. My engine was running smoothly, but I would have needed a bomb to get more impact on board. I was drawing, ramping, and swinging with 1/1s, but not much else. Iroas is great in addition with something else, but by itself it does not quite end the game. Kelly and Frank were really the ones driving the threat matter this game. Alela with Anointed Procession is already a problem, and when combined with Divine Visitation, your time is counted. On the other hand, Frank's deck is very explosive, and when he dropped Perforos, it was a matter of couple of spells. Shared Animosity was the cherry on top of the Pain Sunday. On the last turn, I was holding a generous gift in my hand and hesitated to destroy the Shared Animosity before it triggered. I decided to take the risk because I was able to create 3 tokens to block some snake or destroy Xyris before damage. I was kind of hoping Frank would send me less and I could get out of it, but he was aware of my potential blockers and we ended up being very dead. The fact that Xyris shares a type with his tokens is really strong with Shared Animosity. Overall, a very solid commander. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Make sure to subscribe for more. We are posting a video every Friday and Patreons get early access on Thursday. I try and improve the videos every time and hopefully it is noticeable. See you soon and take care.
Okay, so you guys go bird stuff and I'll go pillage.